And by the time I left, we were doing about 60 million disputes per year.
And so in 2018, I was crazy. In 2020, I wasn't so crazy.
Everybody thought that I was absolutely crazy.
Conflict is inevitable. It's a universal human experience. But for centuries, the way we solved it was rigid. You hired a lawyer, you waited months, and then you physically walked up steps into a court building, and there you fought. Sometimes you won, and sometimes you lost. I'm in Conroe, Texas. I'm sitting just outside the main courthouse in the middle of the city. Directly across the street from me, facing this courthouse, is a different kind of place. It's where people in conflict go to try to make peace. It's called the Montgomery County Dispute Resolution Center, or DRC. They've been around since 1988, handling mediations, helping people resolve legal disagreements, and training mediators to be peacemakers. But these days, inside those mediation offices, they're doing something different. Something that just one generation ago would have been impossible. They are resolving life-altering conflicts without the people in conflict ever breathing the same air. And their reach in resolving conflicts is no longer just limited to this city, this county, or this state, but the whole world. Welcome to the story of online dispute resolution, or ODR. Come with me on this journey as we look into the past, the present, and the future of this revolution. I'm here to learn how this mediation office is leveraging technology to help parties in a dispute make peace. The story of ODR can be seen in community mediation centers just like this one around the world. And this particular story of ODR traces back to ideas that first emerged in the late 1980s on a university campus in Massachusetts. We'll get there. But first, I want to show you what those ideas made possible for one mediator here.
Hi, welcome to the DRC. All right, and it'll be right down this hallway. Just keep walking. You'll walk straight into the mediation room.
So, Glenna, thank you so much for doing this. And you're a volunteer mediator with the DRC. And so it's awesome to have you be able to show us a little bit of what a typical online mediation might look like in this new world of ODR. Glenna will take us through a family mediation case conducted entirely over Zoom. Amber and Kai are divorcing. Their daughter Hannah is 8, and the mediator must lead the two parties and Kai's attorney Deborah through their conflicts over their home and their daughter's international travel. Such disputes used to require everyone sitting in the same room. Today, each party is in a different location and justice happens on a screen.
So the DRC practices what's called facilitative mediation. The premise underlying that is the parties to any dispute are the best person to resolve it. Yeah? You guys know your family situation, your schedule, your child better than anybody else. So Kai and Amber, if you all reach an agreement, that would be in Hannah's best interest. Does that make sense? Okay, Amber, you have the floor.
Okay. So like you said, we're looking towards the future, right? And basically what I'm wanting out of it, I need to keep the house. We're in a really good school district. Hannah loves her classmates. She loves her teachers. And I'm not okay with her leaving the country.
To be honest, I need some money. I need some money. I travel, we need some money. I need money now, So, in summer during school break, I actually can get up to 6 weeks off. So I really want to take Hannah, just expand her horizon, learn what the world look like.
Deborah, do you have anything to add?
In listening to this, think about it. The world changes like overnight, right? Which country's safe, which country isn't. So in a broad statement of never being able to go to China or anywhere abroad, I think is something that is not realistic or reasonable.
The lines are drawn. Two parents, both wanting the best for their daughter, seeing the world through very different lenses. What you just watched is online dispute resolution, or ODR. At its simplest, it's the use of technology to help people resolve conflicts without having to be in the same physical space. Now, before you take this for granted as just another Zoom meeting, know that this is a big deal, something entirely new in humanity. In some ODR disputes, they're resolved with a human mediator on screen, like Glenna. In others, they're resolved entirely by software, no human in the middle. But the goal is always the same, giving people the way to settle disputes without having to go to war in a courthouse like the one across the street. I got the inspiration to tell ODR story when I traveled to Greenwich, London in April 2025 for the 25th International Forum on ODR. It's the annual gathering of ODR tech fellows who meet to discuss the development of online conflict resolution. Hey everyone, it's Mag from Lawyers Mediators International. Welcome back to the LMI podcast on the road. This time I'm recording from London. Those 2 days of hearing from ODR pioneers and realizing the transformative power of what this new technology means made me realize that I need to tell ODR story. Not just the technology story, not the how Zoom changed everything story, but the deeper story of a decades-long effort by a small group of pioneers who believed long ago that justice should be accessible to everyone from anywhere. But before we talk about the technology, we need to talk about COVID.
In 2019, for that Christmas, John and I had taken a cruise, a 34-day cruise, and I was in Antarctica. And we were watching CNN that they were shutting down China. I said, that's a riot. What do you mean they're shutting down China? Because there was illness. But with a master's in public health, I also pay attention to this stuff more maybe than somebody else would. So I'm connecting the dots. So all of a sudden we get back and we no longer put down our suitcase and probably threw the first dirty load of clothes in the washer. And then all of a sudden they're saying, America is kind of shutting down. Yeah. Something's going on here. And we had classes coming up. And I always did use my everything in person because I believed in that so much. Having people in person was very, very important. And you came to me years ago and said, we're going to start doing online. Because once back in the day, we really only had Skype. Yes. And I did do a couple mediations where somebody was in Hungary and their other sibling was in Hawaii. And so we had morning, we had night. The girl in Hungary was sitting in her bathroom because they were in a hotel room, and she's sitting on the bathroom counter vanity with her computer. And so that was my first mediation I did electronically.
Remember the year approximately? What year were talking about? Probably early
2000.
Okay.
2000. But it was a big deal because we had to set up all our computers. We had some of the other siblings here. So we had the computers facing a computer. I mean, it was so clumsy. We had a telephone in the middle of the room. I had to have my husband come and I had a co-mediator just to help me. So, because of the logistics of somebody, so she could be sworn, we were all part of the process. Yeah. And the logistics were a nightmare. It took us about 2 hours to set it up. Yeah. And then we prayed a lot that the Skype wouldn't go down. So the short answer is I have not mediated in person since 2020. Oh. That's my short answer. And now I find it such an advantage. And my clientele has expanded literally around the world.
So what did you know? And when did you know it with regards to online mediation or technology, audio, this whole topic? When did you ever start thinking or hearing about this through all your decades of becoming a trainer?
At different programs, there is a man called Colin Rule. And Colin was right on top of things. He has been very instrumental in keeping the mediation world informed of the changes in the flow of the technology that is supporting some of these changes.
Back in the mediation, things got heated, and Glenna is choosing to move the parties into separate Zoom breakout rooms. Basically, the digital equivalent of each person sitting in their own private meeting room so they can share their deeper concerns.
Left last time not being able to finish talking about him taking her back to China to go visit family.
So you're hesitant about her going to China on vacations?
Yeah, everybody keeps talking about how we're going to be at war with China eventually. We have all those tariffs and stuff with China. She's an American citizen. He is now too. I don't think it's safe.
And you're basing that on a future possibility of war with China. Yeah, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe I believe she needs to see what China really look like. And I have some, U.S. friends, in China, they love it. They love it. Yeah, they generally don't believe that China is dangerous like that, social media.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to open the breakout rooms and you're going to each get join buttons in a minute. Amber, tell me about your concerns with your daughter going to visit her family in China.
So, my ex tends to believe whatever literally anybody else has to say over anything me or my daughter has to say.
Is there an age you would feel more comfortable with her traveling abroad?
Yeah, we had talked before about her getting her own cell phone when she's 12.
And is that an age where you would feel comfortable with her traveling outside the country?
I don't know.
Let's just go ahead and acknowledge that you're the mama and you don't want your child to ever leave you or you can't take care of her, right? That's just a thing.
Yes, it is. I'm mama bear and it is so hard to let go. Yeah. Especially because I had my own difficulties and stuff, and I know we're supposed to be looking forward, and I'm trying not to put my own situation off on her.
And then there's the length of the trip. I know he said he could get up to 6 weeks off at a time. How are you feeling about? Because it can't be a weekend trip, right? China is a long travel. So what time period, would you feel comfortable with?
For me, the time period's not as important if it's during his visitation and not going into mine.
In the other breakout room, Kai is making a very different case.
I'm here. Mm-hmm. Did you guys have anything you want to tell me before I give you Amber's proposal? Or?
Kai was thinking maybe the first trip not as long, not the full 6-week trip to China. So maybe if the concern is the country of China, then maybe a different country for a shorter period this time, and then they can build on that.
I can make it shorter to make it sounds reasonable, 3 weeks-ish.
Both sides are moving. Positions that seemed impossible 10 minutes ago are softening. This is what mediation does. It finds the space between no and never. If it could only spread. Dr. Barbara Sunderland Manuso had mentioned Colin Rule and how his was one of the big names in ODR before the COVID pandemic. I got a chance to meet with Colin in Fort Worth, where he was gracious enough not just to sit down and talk, but to have me accompany him on his ODR presentation for court staff at the local Fort Worth courthouse.
I think this is where we're going exactly. Yes, so we are going to the traffic court here in Fort Worth. And we're going to be showing them our traffic ODR platform. So let me get us 2 hours because it's pretty cheap. Most of the arbitration in the US, but we build software, and mostly what we focus on is the courts. building software for court resolution. So we're going to be talking about the traffic work that we're doing today. My boss.
ODR is not just about individuals at mediation. It's also about helping resolve disputes at scale, such as through the courts or in e-commerce. Colin's work these days showcases how ODR can industrialize dispute resolution for millions.
I always now I'm interested. Online dispute resolution essentially is using technology to help people resolve their disputes without having to get together in person. So we've rolled out many court ODR systems. There's something like 90 courts in the US that have deployed ODR. And we're not the only platform. There's other platforms too, like Matterhorn and Turbo Court. But the goal is, if anybody has an issue with the court, they can do it online. They can communicate online. And we find 80% of people are doing it on mobile devices. And most of the resolutions that we achieve through court ODR is at a time when the court's closed for business. So it's late on a weekday or on the weekends. So
I sat down at the Texas A&M University School of Law, where Colin is a visiting professor, to learn more about the origins of ODR.
All right, so let me get you into the law school here. Well, sure. You can run around and get as much footage as you like. That's the hearing room, yeah. I was thinking we might do it in there, but no, I think it's booked with students. Well, and I do. There's a lot of really nice people around here I'd love to introduce you to if we have time.
Online dispute resolution as a field happened at a conference in 1997 that was convened in Washington, D.C. It was called the NC-AIR conference. And Ethan Katsh attended that conference. And there was some discussion about how are we going to resolve all the disputes that are going to arise in this new global online e-commerce marketplace. And that was sort of the beginning. The first time anyone referred to online dispute resolution was at that meeting. And the next year, Ethan started a program at UMass Amherst called CITDR, the Center for Information Technology and Dispute Resolution. And he started an online conference called ADR Cyber Week. And he invited people who were interested in dispute resolution online to come to this conference. And it was a pretty small conference at the beginning. But, we were all excited about the potential of the growth of the internet and trying to figure out how we could build redress systems that would work in this new environment. And we had a discussion forum, I remember in 1998. What should we call this field? People called it electronic dispute resolution, EADR, or technology assisted dispute resolution. But we eventually settled on ODR because we wanted to emphasize the connection between ADR and ODR. Ethan actually started a pilot program with an auction website, kind of like eBay. It was a smaller version of eBay, but it was started by some law students. And they found Ethan because he was a very prominent scholar in this area. And they said, hey, will you resolve the disputes between our buyers and sellers? Well, it turns out that smaller auction marketplace was eventually bought by eBay, who was really the big kahuna at the time as well.
Soon after, the eBay marketplace exploded with disputes, hundreds at a time, and Ethan's small UMass operation couldn't keep up alone. New ODR startups began circling the e-commerce space. Colin had launched one of them, OnlineResolution.com, out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's when PayPal came calling.
PayPal reached out to me, and I went out and was able to meet the founders of PayPal. That was Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and David Sachs and a lot of people that have become very, very successful since then. But they knew, even as a payment provider, they needed to have a way to resolve any disputes that arose between buyers and sellers. So I didn't end up working with PayPal. Actually, once I found out about how high their fraud rates were, I said, I don't think I want to get involved with these guys. But then eBay bought PayPal for more than $1 billion so that they could control the payment mechanism, because a lot of the resolutions to disputes arise on the payment side. And I had written a book called Online Dispute Resolution for Business. They found that book and they called me up and asked me to come out and consult at eBay. And then they offered me a job. And I said, well, I can't come out. I'm running a company in Massachusetts. I'm busy. And they said, well, here's how much we want to pay you. So, okay, I guess I work for eBay now. So I moved out in 2003 to San Jose. And I became the first director of online dispute resolution at eBay and PayPal. But we did end up building an online dispute resolution platform within eBay and eventually within PayPal as well that we called the Resolution Center. And I was there from 2003 to 2011. And by the time I left, we were doing about 60 million disputes per year. And 90% of those resolutions were software only. So we didn't have a human mediator or customer service rep that needed to touch the case. It was just the parties to the dispute, usually buyers and sellers.
As Colin spoke about the story of ODR, he kept pointing to that person, Ethan Katsh, someone he credited with being the father of ODR. Before I could meet Ethan, I had a few more people to see who had influenced the development and acceptance of conflict resolution through tech, thus beginning my long road east. After Fort Worth, my travels took me to Washington, D.C. in the fall of 2025. Colin had pointed me to one more name before I could meet Ethan, Daniel Rainey. Dan, an author, had spent 2 decades teaching ODR before most lawyers and mediators had heard the term. If there were rules, laws, regulations, anything written down about how ODR was supposed to work in America, Dan was a person to ask.
We're here in Washington, D.C., and this has kind of been your neck of the woods, right? And where you've been working as a teacher on all things ODR. But tell us about the regulations and the lawmakers and their involvement and in the progress of online dispute resolution.
Well, I would have to say that in terms of governance and in terms of laws for online dispute resolution, there hasn't really been much action. The action has been with alternative dispute resolution, and mostly that has been tied to the courts in one way or another, court-referred mediation and issues like that. In terms of online dispute resolution, the regulatory and governance activity has been fairly limited. And where we've seen a lot of regulatory activity is in the ADR space, and most of that connected to the courts. Where we are seeing some impact is not so much in online dispute resolution legislation and regulation, but in regulation and legislation tied to technology itself. And even there, I mean, a lot of the tech oligarchs, so to speak, are arguing that there should be very little regulation because that hampers development. And so what we're seeing is a debate over particularly things like artificial intelligence regarding privacy, information security, that sort of thing. And that indirectly affects online dispute resolution, but it's not really about online dispute resolution. It's about the technology that we might adapt to online dispute resolution. And technology got my attention very early on for a couple of reasons. When you talk about dispute resolution, mediation particularly, what do you do as a mediator? You manage communication. You get the parties to deal with information and data in some way or another, and you manage group dynamics. Well, those 3 things are the essence of what technology brings to the table. So if they're central to mediation and central to technology, it occurred to me that there's no way they can't interact.
So do you see that ODR, or online dispute resolution, is a natural evolution of ADR, or alternative dispute resolution?
Yes, I do. Going back to what I said earlier about the fundamental, the functions that you fulfill as a mediator, those functions, if you look around at the way society is now, I mean, you carry around your phone, which is a communication device, a data evaluation device, a group conflict and group discussion device. I mean, in your pocket, you have all the things that were central to mediation when we were doing it face to face. And everybody has, I say everybody, almost everybody has one of those. And so if you talk about who has access to dispute resolution, if you're talking about an online dispute resolution environment where you're using phones and computers, basically everybody has access to that. And you cannot say that about face-to-face mediation, and you certainly can't say that about the court system. I was talking to one of the students who was at the university, and she had been sent to the airport to pick up a guest speaker, a very, very well-known mediator, whose name I won't mention, who was coming to do a lecture at their university. And she told him as they were driving to the university that she had been taking a class in online dispute resolution. And his exact response immediately was, oh, that'll never work. That was normal until 2019, 2020, when COVID hit. And suddenly, if you were going to work, you were going to work online. Yeah. And all of a sudden, not only did it work, in some cases it worked really well and better than being face-to-face. And so in 2018, I was crazy. In 2020, I wasn't so crazy. And all my colleagues were not quite so crazy either. And the upshot of that is that technology has now been integrated very deeply into dispute resolution in many ways. But I think one of the problems with that is that people have done it without thinking too much about what that means.
Back at the mediation in progress, Glenna has been shuttling between breakout rooms for over an hour now. New proposals are emerging, but one issue won't go away. Hannah has been told by her parents that she won't get her own cell phone until she's 12, and Kai wants her to have one for international travel.
And here's the thing with the 12 years old and the cell phone. Now they have so many parental restrictions or limited access calling. I mean, if you're trying to make it 12 years old because you don't want her to have a cell phone, you can give her even like a phone just for the trip with limited caller, people she can call or can communicate with her if she wants to track her. So that doesn't have anything to do with the trip to China.
Okay, Amber, I'm back. And they have counter proposal, but they did hear your proposal.
While you were in the other room, I don't know what they came back with the House, but I want to share with you, just because, you know, it wasn't 9 years for nothing. I know how he thinks a little bit. I called my uncle. He's really well off, and he's agreed to help me with buying out the house from him.
Okay, so you would have sole ownership of the house, and your uncle would sign the refi pay or whatever, and pay out Kai's equity share.
Right.
Okay, thank you for doing that. That's perfect. Mm-hmm. I think we might have an agreement. So Amber, I gave him your suggestions, and she's fine with the 3 weeks travel, some to Asia, provided the cell phone has the conditions that that we talked about, the parental controls, and you agree to having her while she's traveling check in every other day. So mom, just to reassure mom that she's fine. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, she can can call her mom whenever she wants.
Okay, very good. And we also understand that cell phone is just for use while she's traveling. No,
right. A 3-week trip, not China yet. A cell phone for the trip only. The house we finance with help from Amber's uncle. Positions are collapsing into agreement. The screen, which the adversarial system would call a wall, is doing the opposite. It's holding the room. And now it's time to head north to meet the people who first imagined this was possible. I flew into Boston one cold evening in early 2026. The cold air hit me the moment I stepped off the plane. It had been over half a year since London, since I decided this story needed to be told. Tomorrow, I'd be driving west to Leah Wing, the current director of the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution, or NCTDR.
So where exactly are we going right now? We're driving west through Massachusetts, and we're heading to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. That basically is the mothership. That's where in the late 90s, Ethan Katsh and Janet Rifkin founded the Center for Information Technology and Dispute Resolution, now the NCTDR. That's basically where all of ODR began. So I'm going to meet Leah Wing. She's the current director of the NCTDR. Leah's work focuses primarily on the ethics of it. And so one of the things that she discusses a lot is, sure, we can automate and reach scale in ODR, but should we? Is it always just? And so I'm going to meet her today to get her take on some of the ethical concerns in the development of ODR and find out what her thoughts are about the future.
In 600 feet, your destination will be on the right.
So one of the reasons I came to Amherst is because I wanted to trace the steps back and understand the context of what was going on in the early 90s and mid 90s when the original framers of ODR who were thinking about this craft sat down and started to think, while the rest of the world saw the internet as a place like a mall or library, they saw the internet as a place filled with conflict. This campus is where the computer first entered human negotiations, human conflict resolution. We used to always think of technology as just a tool, like a telephone or calculator. But on this campus, the ideas were revolutionary. We started seeing technology as a fourth party, as a entity that was in addition to us, humans, the participants. Ethan Katsh and Janet Rifkin realized that technology is not just a passive tool. It was now taking a place at the table. The technology itself could manage information. It could impact how we communicate with one another. The technology itself started taking a life of its own, thus becoming the fourth party.
There. So
hey,
nice to
good
meet
to see you, Leah.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. So this is a great campus, and so thank you for having me. It's took a little while to get up here, but everything worked out. And so now I'm just excited to have you show me around and where this all thing started.
Absolutely. Well, I will say this building, as nondescript as it may seem, is actually the place where online dispute resolution was born.
Yeah, well, I want to go inside. Let's check it out.
Let's do it. Shall we head upstairs?
Yes.
I can show you where the Legal Studies Department was first located.
Awesome.
And where ODR first experiments got underway.
Okay.
Yes, so this is Hampshire House, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and the location of the Legal Studies Department when Ethan Katsh and Janet Rifkin, faculty members here, gave birth to the idea of online dispute resolution, taking their expertise in law, in legal technology, and in dispute resolution. In fact, I will also mention, while it's an aside to the focus of the present discussion, it's also the birthplace of peer mediation. Janet Rifkin conceived of that idea. And so the first peer mediation program in the country was born here at Hampshire House as well. These are where the faculty offices were and the TA offices were, and the hub of activity for the first experiments in applying technology to dispute resolution. In particular, when the internet went public, as you know, it was where the first experiments with using email for examining how conflicts are burgeoning online and through email, and ways that we might experiment with helping prevent and resolve them. Janet's office and Ethan's office down here. My office was in 222. Happy to show you around the corner. From 1993 on, it's in these offices that we were literally experimenting for the first time with, beginning with an online ombuds service. Right. And experimenting. It was very exciting to do some role plays with the use of email, trying to figure out how we handle sending messages, reply all, and sending messages just to one party and the other. So beginning to think about the boundaries, the issues around confidentiality, the issues around how we can increase understanding and trust across space where you can't see each other. Of course, at that time, there was no video conferencing.
After Leah walked me through the hallways where Ethan, Janet, and she herself first experimented with using technology to resolve disputes, she expanded in a second talk about the growing role of establishing global standards for ODR to help protect against things like insecurity and confidentiality. Tomorrow, I'd be driving east. There was one more place I needed to see before meeting Ethan himself.
I'm out here at Boston Commons Park. It's one of the oldest parks in the U.S. A short distance from here is Brookline. That's where, in 1989, a company called The World created the world's first ISP, or Internet Service Provider. It basically allowed regular people, mainly in business and the commercial industries, to be able to access the internet. Before that time, it was just military people and university people who were able to access the web. But The World allowed for regular folks to be able to tap into the power of the internet.
But 1989 mattered for another reason. That same year, 100 miles west at UMass Amherst, Ethan Katsh published his groundbreaking book, The Electronic Media and the Transformation of Law. During my talk with Ethan, he introduced his works, including the foundational text he later co-wrote in 2001 with Janet Rifkin. So before most humans had ever heard of the internet, Ethan was already writing about how technology would change how we practice law and resolve conflicts.
All right, well, let's talk about a couple of decades very quickly. But the beginning for my interest in technology was in law school, where there was no technology except television, no computers in the building, no access to online sources. In the late 70s, early 80s, a colleague introduced me to Marshall McLuhan, who had written as famously, "The medium is the message." And what was that message? McLuhan is a bit out of favor, but the basic germ of the idea, which wasn't really totally original with him, was that it's not the content of television that has its impact on the public, but rather the changes in which we interact with technology, in this case, television. And that occupied me for a good part of the late 70s, early 80s. Our project with eBay, which resolved about 200 disputes in a 2-week period, which was by far the most disputes ever resolved online. 200 seemed like an overwhelming number.
For all the early and recent work you've done in this field, what do you believe your legacy will be when the history books are written about this subject?
Well, thanks to Colin, primarily, I'm generally thought of as the originator of ODR. I used to try and tell him to stop saying that, but he never would and never will. And I say it's a little exaggerated because Colin was there at the beginning. He used to live in the next town to where we're talking, and we used to have lunch, once a month or so, just to talk about these things. I'm being credited more than I deserve to be credited for. Of course, this book, if you look at chapter 2, you'll find a line in there of where there's some mention that computer systems will be used to resolve cases. I'd say anybody who was involved with ODR in the 1990s, but even the people involved, the people who organized the 1996 meeting in D.C., which had about 100 people there. All of them get some credit for affecting my thinking, at least.
Colin made the comment about standing on the shoulders of giants who had come before him. And what do you think about that statement?
I don't think I'm anywhere near a giant, but I've had some influence that's persisted. So I suppose at some point I thought this will just fade away and die away.
Wow.
But it hasn't. The idea that I started this will at some point be forgotten. I have no doubt about that. As more pressing issues and more new systems develop. So we don't even know what will AI dispute resolution be called AI dispute resolution, or will it just be ODR? Personally, I think all dispute resolution will be ODR.
One of the people Ethan credits from the 1990s was Janet Rifkin, his UMass colleague at Hampshire House, and eventual 2001 co-author. By her own account, Janet was the bridge between Ethan's ideas and the wider world of mediation. We connected over Zoom.
Reluctantly went to law school, pushed into it, went kicking and screaming, but this was in the early 70s. So it was a very different, political time. And then after law school, I became a public defender in New York City. I mean, it was just a machine. I mean, it wasn't really about justice. It was just about clearing calendars. And, it was dehumanizing, to say the least. Mm-hmm. I felt like that whole emerging field of ADR was something, it was an antidote to my problems, or sort of my distaste for the adversarial system in which I was a participant. I was the connector, I think, to a lot of, certainly to Ethan and to Leah and to many other people, to bring them into this field. And they took the ball and ran with it.
Okay, so can you talk to us a little bit about the book that you guys wrote? Online Dispute Resolution, which I'm holding up, is a 2001 publishing from you and Ethan Katsh. It's called Online Dispute Resolution, Resolving Conflicts in Cyberspace, the first book on the fastest growing phenomenon in the world of conflict resolution. Just want to get your take on how big of a deal this was, and then how did you come about contributing to it?
I think my contribution was really to try to give some examples of, to come up with scenarios really in which this would happen. To be honest, I don't think I appreciated the impact that it would really have. I think Ethan was much more of the kind of pioneer, and part of it was because he was more interested and more savvy about cyberspace and looking at that. When I brought that concept to the world of mediators, of community mediators, of court-related mediators, they were very resistant to the idea. Okay, it felt slightly heretical, and it felt like a sort of challenge to the fundamental ideology of mediation at that time. I gave a presentation in Madison, Wisconsin, and I had all the community mediators there. And I showed I gave some examples of conflict that was being resolved through email, and people went crazy. I mean, it's almost like I was chased off the stage.
Every year, law professionals from around the U.S. and oftentimes from around the world, they descend on Chicago, Illinois to attend a legal technology conference hosted by the American Bar Association. It's right behind me. That conference is called the ABA Legal Tech Show and is filled with exhibitions presenting the latest in legal technology. Now, it's predominantly designed for lawyers or law firms. So tech solutions intended for mediators or other dispute resolvers have not been showcased as much. That has started to change.
At the ABA Tech Show, I met Enrique Torres, a board-certified family law attorney, mediator, and former associate judge from Harris County, Texas. Like many mediators, he was initially skeptical.
This is your first time coming here, right?
My first time to the ABA Technology Conference, yes, sir.
Yes, and so let's talk about ODR. You obviously are a mediator as well, and that is a critical thing here. And so being a mediator, what have you seen in the evolution of mediation and technology?
Before COVID, mediating was done in person. Going to court obviously was done in person. And I was kind of reluctant. I was one of the people that was a little reluctant at the very beginning. I wanted to have all my hearings in person. I wanted to have my mediations in person. And then slowly but surely, it started making sense. The technology made sense. Doing it on Zoom or whatever type of platform people were using, on Teams, I believe that a lot of people use as well. All of a sudden, it became more convenient. It became more efficient. I think that any platform that helps people resolve disputes, and especially with the use of artificial intelligence and the use of this technology, I mean, it puts us in a different world. Again, just like we're looking at these LLMs, like, what is this? The world is changing. Well, it's the same thing with these platforms. Zoom, who knew what Zoom was before COVID?
Yeah.
I had no clue. I never went to Zoom hearings, but you are following that trend and you are going to help set up a different world, that world where we're more connected, more, connected to the technology, more able to use the technology, and more able to settle disputes and to do things without having to, limit ourselves based on the past and what we used to do in the past historically. You are embracing the future in essence.
From Chicago, I didn't fly to Buenos Aires. Dr. Alberto Elisavetsky and I met over Zoom. Alberto is the founder and president of ODR Latin America. His story is the story of what happens when you tell people mediation can happen through a screen in a part of the world where many had never considered it.
One day I was surfing the net and I found the Massachusetts Amherst conflict resolution. And I walked in the kitchen. She was cooking. And I said, Alicia, there are some people in the United States saying that you could mediate online. Well, she started laughing and telling me that was absolutely impossible. I get in touch with the people in the center, and I participated in the first Cyber Week, and at that time was in Haifa in Israel. The date arrived, I was very scared and nervous because, to tell you the truth, in Latin America at that time, ODR was zero, totally zero. And I was talking with one of the guys working at that time with Ethan Katsh. He said, Alberto, tell us your dreams. And with that, I flew to Israel and it was like a kind of presentation and examination. I remember that Dan Rainey was sitting in the room. The end of my presentation was that night Ethan Katsh nominated me as a fellow of the center. I was the first Latin American fellow of the National Center. And they asked me if the next year, in 2010, I could organize the forum in Buenos Aires, Argentina. When I came back, nobody cares about online dispute resolution, Cyber Week, nothing. Just face-to-face or die. The dean of the university called my wife and I said, Alberto is allowed to speak whatever he wants, but it's forbidden at this university talk about it's possible do mediation online.
Wow.
And she was crying because at that time, everybody thought that I was absolutely crazy. Finally, I was able to convince the Minister of Justice of one province in Argentina in the north, Salta, develop a pilot project of online mediation. It was in Salta province, 2012. And all of a sudden, COVID arose, and all the mediation community, at least in Iberoamerica, realized that it was a money issue. Basically, if you want to survive and get money for your family, you have to mediate online.
From a Zoom call with Alberto in Argentina, I moved to an in-person interview on another continent. It's my first trip to Africa, and I took advantage of the trip to meet with the director of the Nairobi Center for International Arbitration to discuss ODR in East Africa. Dr. Henry Morigi gave me a tour before our sit-down.
And then they'll come in and they will go to the desk.
Yeah, then they'll be cleared, then they'll come up, go to the reception, then they'll...
As in Latin America, ODR development here follows a drive to connect millions who might otherwise not have access to justice. Interconnected with Kenya's push to digitize their currency, Kenya skipped the landline and went straight to mobile money. Now the question is, why not mobile justice?
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is like the welcome area.
This is where I've been multiple times.
Yeah. Also, yeah, that's Jen there. Hi, Jen. Yes. Okay. So this is the welcome area. We hope you got a good welcome.
Actually, absolutely, I did.
That's good.
Thank you so much.
That's really good. Yeah. So thank you. NCIA was created in 2013 by an act of parliament.
So how has ODR played a role in increasing this access to Kenyans who might otherwise, they might be too remote from the city center, or they may not have the financial resources to be able to tap into justice? How has ODR helped them?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, because one of the things about society is that you must be able to speak to the needs of the people. Our constitution has given us a commandment under Article 48 that we must make sure that access to justice is accessible and affordable. Almost everybody in this country, because we're about 55 million as a population, has a smartphone or a phone at least. So what that means is that they have access to communication, they have access to it. We have to embrace this, because this is where the world is going. This is the age of communication, an age of information, and we must be at the forefront. So as NCIA, what we're trying to do is to make sure that all the things that we do internally are the public is aware about it. So that then we are telling our story to the world as to what we do. And we're telling people all over the world that NCIA is available to offer alternative dispute resolution services that are predictable, that are cost efficient, that are fast. So we are embracing that as NCIA, in addition to using the platforms that have been created by government and other entities to offer.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
From Nairobi's arbitration center, I moved across the Mediterranean to Paris. Mireille Philippe and I met over Zoom. She was at the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, for 40 years. The ICC is probably the world's largest arbitration institution. And long before the word ODR existed, she was already building one of the first ODR platforms in the world for arbitration.
Can I ask you, just for people who might not know about the ICC, could you
Sure. Yes. The International Chamber of Commerce actually has a very important department called the International Court of Arbitration that administers arbitrations from point A to the delivery of the award. It is one of the first international dispute resolution organizations founded in 1919, and the ICC International Chamber, the headquarters are in Paris, but then we have also country representatives around the world. I truly consider that it is the best international dispute resolution organization because it administers the procedures in a very effective way from point one to the delivery, as I said.
Could you take us then to the beginnings of ODR? And I know you're in Paris. You're also European. And so I'm going to ask you to speak broadly for the entire continent, if possible.
It all started actually when Ben Davis was requested to build a database for the court. He included me in his team, and that was back in the early 90s. At that time, it was the old computers using only keyboards with screens with a black background and characters in orange, yellow, orange. So the database was the first step. And the next step was the Netcase platform. And it was really extremely efficient because the entire case was online. Everything was very well organized. You had a page dedicated for every information you needed in the case, the contact details, the financial aspects, the pleadings. The way it happened, actually, in year 2000, I was requested by the president of the Court of Arbitration, Dr. Robert Briner, to build the platform. And I told him, I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, so I don't see why I should be taking this on. He insisted, and after a long discussion, he looked at me over his glasses and said, Madame, you are the only one in-house with the expertise you have and with the ICC experience, and you will build this platform. So that was clear. I thought to myself, my God, where have I put my foot in? I don't know. I know nothing about it. And luckily, what happened a few months later, so I started reading a lot, including Ethan Katsh's book, the very first one, and many other also articles and so on. And it happened happily just a few weeks or months later that the famous arbitrator, Gabrielle Kaufmann-Koller, I mentioned her name when we first spoke, she invited us to a colloquium in Geneva. And I found myself sitting around a square table with Ethan Katsh. I think Colin Rule was there, Dana Haviland, who passed away very recently, and many other people, so stakeholders in dispute resolution and technology. And we discussed about how to bring technology online. From that point on, we started meeting annually to share experience, research, knowledge in all sorts.
Another group Mirez would later meet with was the United Nations body named UNCITRAL. That's the international body set up to help harmonize global trade laws. As ODR spread around the globe, a working group in UNCITRAL was tasked with coming up with global rules for ODR. I asked Mirez about that experience.
It was eye-opener because delegates who come to the working group come with an agenda, with instructions from their governments or from the institutions that send them, that delegate them to the meetings at UNCITRAL. So it is complicated to reach agreements, even less so consensus. And what I experienced with the technical notes on ODR that we finally drafted, actually we succeeded drafting it simply because UNCITRAL has imposed on us a deadline to deliver a document. Whatever we want to call it, whatever it contained, we had to deliver something by February 2016. And this is what we've done.
Another voice in that room was Professor Michael Fang, a law professor from China, with legal training from both China and the United States. From those UNCITRAL sessions, Professor Fang went home to engage in one of the boldest experiments in dispute resolution anywhere on Earth. Professor Fang joined me on Zoom.
I'm a professor for law in China and currently teach online from the United States. Additionally, I'm a fellow at the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution. In 2013, while serving as a senior advisor to a Chinese law firm, I delivered a continuing legal education lecture on ODR at the Beijing Noise Association, which occurred about 5 years before the establishment of China's first internet court. China's internet courts show that public ODR can handle more complex digital disputes. ODR is no longer just about holding simple video meetings. Today, internet court can use online litigation platforms, blockchain evidence preservation, AI-assisted tools, electronic service, online hearings, and digital enforcement. This technology makes it possible to handle disputes that depend heavily on digital evidence, platform records, user data, and online behavior. In 2017, Richard Susskind visited Westlake Court in Hangzhou. He later wrote an article titled China as the Next Leader in Legal Technology. He was impressed by online legal help, e-filing, virtual hearings, voice recognition. The court technology had already attracted serious international attention even before the Hangzhou Internet Court was established. I also remember visiting the Hangzhou Internet Court in 2018. The group showed a visible astonishment, especially Colin Rule's jaw-dropping look of amazement. That movement captured my point. China's ODR development is not only about technology, it's about using high technology to support high standards of due process.
If Michael Fang shows what ODR looks like when a state builds it from the top down, Thomas Giglione shows what it looks like when one mediator carries it across borders, country by country. Thomas is the founder of the ODR platform, We Agree Mediators. But the part of his story that brings us here are the 18 years he spent overseas, most of them as the only non-Vietnamese court-appointed mediator in Vietnam. He joined me from Toronto.
I had a hobby as a private pilot at the time that pulled me into teaching crisis negotiation around the world. Bomb threats, hijackings, terrorism, the whole show. That work took me around the world to Iran first and later Vietnam. I spent 12 years plus in Vietnam.
When you first arrived there, what was the state of mediation there? And then how had it changed by the time you left?
When I arrived in Vietnam, mediation was basically brand new. The country had the laws on paper. Actually, they took a lot of the civil procedures from Canada. Canada was one of the principal participants in transforming the legal system in Vietnam. But they had laws on paper. It was basically a civil justice system, but almost no practical experience. None of the lawyers knew very much about it. It was all on paper as theory. So I helped build it from the ground up. I organized the largest mediation ADR conference in Southeast Asia back in 2012 with 350 delegates. It turns out you can import the idea faster than the courts can process the paperwork. Now, I would say mediation and ODR is just as advanced as it is in North America.
Because you also lived in China for a few years, you kind of have a broad view of being able to compare how ODR developed in China and how it developed in Vietnam where you had lived. Could you speak to that briefly about the similarities or differences between China and Vietnam when it comes to mediation?
I traveled about 12 different countries teaching ODR and mediation, and every culture handles conflict differently. In China, as you know, saving face is everything. So you learn to give people an exit ramp that lets them keep their dignity.
When did ODR become a serious conversation in parts of the world that you worked in? Was the shift happening before COVID, or did the pandemic force it?
I would say it was already stirring before COVID, really, especially in Vietnam with the e-commerce explosion. The pandemic just hit the accelerator. Suddenly everyone needed to resolve disputes, but they're getting on a plane or sitting in the same room in a court. The backlog in Vietnam for court is crazy. It's worse than it is in North America. Vietnam and the region lead the world in e-commerce share of retail sales. So that creates millions of small disputes every month. The infrastructure is catching up fast, but there's still a huge gap between the volume of online transactions and the tools to fix problems quickly. Forget about traditional courts. They're too slow, too expensive, and too far away for most people. That's exactly where I think ODR shines, because expecting everyone to fly to a courthouse is adorable, but not exactly practical, especially when you're dealing with cross-border stuff, suppliers in another country, it just doesn't work. So ODR shines in when it comes to e-commerce.
From Toronto, the documentary makes one final stop in Asia, back across the Bay of Bengal to India, to a mediator whose journey began with a single cold email.
My background was in history and law, but I did not want to practice law because I wanted to make an impact in the world. I hated going to court. How would you start resolving disputes? So I trained to be a mediator and I just loved it. But at the same time, this was in the late 1990s where there was a great internet revolution. That fascinated me because, I started doing a lot of work on cyber law. And when I started doing a lot of work on cyber law, there was an intersection. Okay, disputes happening. What do we do? E-commerce was coming. It had just then started. We just had, the www, and the information which was there was very little. But I was very fortunate with my research. I came upon two people. One was Ethan Katsh and the other one was Colin Rule. And I started reading a lot about, what they were doing at that time. Their books were coming out at that time as well. So when I started reading that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to be at the intersection of where technology can actually help in the dispute resolution process. But, I just wrote to Ethan, I wrote to Colin, and I told Ethan, I'm interested in, online dispute resolution. I'm trying to do some research. He responded. He sent me some articles. I wrote to Colin. I had an email at that time, searching for an email, finding out where it was. There was no LinkedIn. There was nothing. You couldn't connect. But, you sent out and it was just a cold email. And I wrote to Colin and I said, see, I'm really interested in this. I'm fascinated by your work. I would really like to get into this area. The first call was via Skype. This was again in 2002, time frame. And I started building online dispute resolution India. And that was called ODR India and ODR World. And the way we developed platform, that time was I had one engineer sitting somewhere in the north of India, and I was telling him this is what I want to do with my mediation background, with my negotiation background, with my research and arbitration, and, built ODR offering negotiation, mediation, arbitration, assisted negotiation as well. And I went back to Colin and said, Colin, now, I've done this and I want to launch it. And he was like, yes, launch it. And why don't you start offering these services to eBay India? That's how we started. We started offering our services to eBay India, feedback disputes. And, we started trying out the system. The journey has been like, many companies on the way. We did have, I think we were also trying to show the world that ODR can be a business. It is not just, an idea, but, it is a business where, entrepreneurs can come in, they can make a difference, and, implementations can be at large scales, right? Modria was started in 2011. CREC was started in 2019. And ODR.com was started in 2022. And it took us till about 2017 for us to really, tell people that, see, ODR is a thing. In 2017, things changed and people started recognizing ODR more. And they were like, okay, fine, yes, ODR is there to stay. Till 2017, it was very tough for us to just continue because every day we would beat the drum. Every conference we would beat the drum. We would have naysayers. We would have, okay, what is enforcement? The lawyers would come and ask, okay, how can this work? Even people in ADR community would not understand that. But all of that changed. 2017, people started opening up a little bit more. Once the pandemic happened, everybody was like, okay, we need to get some form of technology to get resolution to our disputes. So that actually gave a big boost. But the biggest boost, I think, happened because of the pandemic was for India. So till then, India was like not into online dispute resolution, at all. Then the pandemic happened. Yeah, that's the shift which happened.
So then, Kai, you'll sign the property over to Amber. Alrighty, I'm going to go over to DocuSign and send this out. So just hang tight and I will get it to you.
Okay, that'll just come in our email then?
It'll go to your email address.
Okay.
Okay, so my DocuSign indicates that you guys have all received it and signed it. Deborah, do you have a fully executed agreement?
Yes,
Amber, have you received a fully executed agreement?
Yes.
Kai?
Yes.
Very good. I want to just thank you all for participating. You are wonderful to work with. And I wish you all the best going forward, particularly Hannah. And I hope she has a fabulous time on her trip. And you want to say anything, Mac?
Oh, no, I was just observing. But thank you guys so much for doing this. And I'm glad that this came to some kind of good resolution.
Thank you. Hopefully I didn't drag it out too much.
Thank you, guys. All wonderful to work with. Again, thank you so much for participating. The DRC will get that signed. I guess they'll file it tomorrow. And best of luck going forward. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A house transferred, a trip planned, a passport applied for, a child's future shaped by two parents who found a way to agree. None of them ever set foot in a courthouse. This is what ODR has already made possible. But there's one more chapter to this story, and it's being written right now. If ODR began in 1989 with a book about technology transforming law, the story isn't finished, because right now in 2026, a new technology is doing to ODR what the internet did to mediation. It's called artificial intelligence. And the same people who built the field of ODR are now the ones trying to figure out what it means.
Most of the people I'd met argued for this field. A smaller group built it with their hands. Chris Draper is one of them, a technologist who designs the systems that resolve our disputes and who's thinking hard about where AI takes them next.
So I'm originally a technologist that works on primarily ultra-hazardous systems. We really consider ultra-hazardous to be anything where small changes in hazard have exponential consequential effects. And in many ways, especially in areas like ODR, that is AI. I think the most important part to remember about AI, as we state in Governing Artificial Intelligence, is it's just a mimic. There's really no ghost in the machine. There's no further magic to it. It's vital to remember that AI is a different tool than the other technologies we've ever used before. Because of its very nature, will observe the world through its biases and its filters and its gaps. And it will create its own data set, its own model of what it believes that information told it from which it will only be engaging with you with synthetic recreations of that information that will hopefully be right enough for what you're needing. The danger of that is that we don't, in the mediation space, recognize or provide the right amount of deference to the reality that it's always going to be a reflection and a mimic of what's truly there. And we're always going to have to be thinking through, is this truly an objective reality I'm dealing with? I think that the challenge we're going to have is, because AI looks like magic, we want to see a ghost in the machine where there isn't one. We want to see intelligence that doesn't exist. We want to see the magic in the mimicry. That's just the way we typically want it, because the reality is human conflicts will always be solved by humans, because that's what it is. It's how are humans going to interact with each other? It's how are humans going to learn to adapt to each other better? It's that connection. It's that responsibility. It's that engagement that we all must share that is the heart of dispute identification, avoidance, resolution of just life. When you all of a sudden start to see the internet be 60% of just machines talking to machines, it makes you wonder what the point is, because the initial objective was allow humans to connect with humans better. The invention of the pencil did not erase the need for the human. AI is not going to erase the need for the human. In many ways, it is going to accelerate the need for that human to not just be there, but to be rethinking how they are keeping the needs of the parties, the equity that process must have in order for it to be ethical, front and center.
Can you just speak over the next 5 years? What do you foresee as being a growing trend or trends in the field of ODR because of AI?
When we're looking at ODR, in many ways, our biggest challenge will be, how do we start to see it in all the places it is? If I'm sending a simple torts matter back and forth via email in Word documents, lawyers don't often think about that as being ODR, but technically it is. As we start to think about that process that you're looking at with Stripe, that is within the scope of ODR, is what that is. When we're looking at these automated processes, whether it started at eBay or now it's something that is beginning in little nudges before we even know it's existing in many of the platforms we're dealing with, those are all ODR when you're looking at the definition of ODR as we've used since the mid-90s. Yet we're going to have to, as a community, wrap our heads around, is this something where we are in ODR creating a fundamental shift in the way we think about balance of power, equity, dispute identification, resolution, and avoidance? Or are we going to allow us to miss the opportunity ODR has for our society at large by thinking it is going to have to remain in a prepackaged item that we can pull off the shelf as an element within a larger ecosystem? I think that ODR personally, especially when you are ethically using artificial intelligence for the elements of facilitation that dispute resolution can provide, is going to be transformative and engaged in every element of our society. And we need to be ready for how we look at the landscape as systems, components, and add-ins versus one that has traditionally been one of single locations, co-location within unitary platforms. And that is where the true promise of ODR sits for all of us in our society, if we're prepared to engage it in all those different facets of where it's going to need to be.
Thank you. I think you just answered the question, can ODR change the world?
can ODR change the world? That's the last question. What are your thoughts?
Well, hasn't it? And it's been insidious. It's here. But the guardrails for it, and to make, again, as we've just said, connecting the dots so people understand what the back door looked like. Not to be so superficial, but I think it's going to be a rough time going forward over the next 50 years.
Can ODR change the world?
I've devoted my life to ODR, and I'm definitely a glass half full kind of person. I think the introduction of the internet has had many unintended negative consequences, for sure. There are many people who are not dispute resolvers. They are dispute exacerbators, and they will use the power of technology to exacerbate disputes. But there are those of us who are devoted to innovating and advancing technology in a way that builds understanding, builds connection, expands justice, and is grounded in the values of the dispute resolution field: fairness, transparency, empathy. So, I don't know what it's going to look like in its final form, but I do know that wherever people are, there is conflict, there are disagreements, our self-interests can clash. And every time a new tool is invented, we put that into the toolbox. And right now, the shiny new tool is artificial intelligence. And it's very, very exciting to think about what doors that's going to open for us. And I do believe the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And one of the ways that we achieve that justice is by innovating, utilizing all these tools and being taking the macro vision in thinking about how we can achieve world peace through these types of techniques.
Well, think back 50 years ago. If I wanted to engage in a dispute, one or two things had to happen. I had to be invited in, maybe, or if I had to go there. I had to be there on the ground. That's completely changed. If there's a conflict, I still can be invited in, but I don't necessarily have to be invited in. I can use all different kinds of media and technology to basically try to affect the people who are involved in that dispute, to offer aid to people who are involved in that dispute, et cetera. And if the people who are involved in the dispute on the other side don't like it, there's not really a lot they can do about it. And the other change is I now have the ability to bring in resources that I couldn't bring in before. And I can do it from afar. I can do it across borders. I can do it in a way that I couldn't do it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So do I think it can change the world? Yeah, I do think technology can change the world. It's going to change the world. Whether we manage it and it changes the world in a good way is another question altogether.
I think it's already changed the world. And I think that's some concrete examples of that is the fact that the reputational feedback process is used worldwide. And while people think of it as customer service, it's dispute prevention and resolution. And it was designed from that lens. We now see video conferencing as a default option for connecting. We frankly are already and have been, before people thought of it as any form of technology-related dispute resolution, been exchanging documents using collaborative writing in order to, now using document share and storage boxes in the cloud. And so people might not think of that as ODR, but it's applying technology to our dispute resolution processes. And so I would argue that the average practitioner has already been changing the world with the way that they use technology, whether they think about it as ODR or not.
Well, I don't think ODR alone can change the world. There's room for the legal system to try to change the world. If you look back at, I talked about McLuhan. If you look back at the impact of print, it changed the world. We wouldn't have a free press if we didn't have a press. We wouldn't have copyright law if there weren't the capabilities for copying things. On and on. So technology changes the world. ODR itself, no. But ODR in collaboration with AI systems hopefully will change the world. And I'm not sure we can hope for anything more than that.
ODR could be a tool, an additional tool to change the world. But I think it's not enough. I think the ODR has a fantastic future. It's a tool, and more than everything, now using artificial intelligence, it's unbelievable what we can produce in a few seconds. Multiple options of mutual benefit, uncountable. Yep. You have a problem, the agent give you 10. You want 10 more, 10 more, 10 more, 50, but you need the human being. But I think it's a fantastic tool.
The answer to the question, to your project question, is that yes, ODR is the current and the future of dispute resolution, and we cannot ignore it and we cannot avoid it. We have to embrace it, make it work for practitioners. Our Kenyan judiciary is doing exactly that, allowing citizens to approach and upload whatever case they have and then be able to resolve it. I know their complaint is on backlog because now with access comes in backlog. And our answer to that, there's alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that exist. We are training our arbitrators to be ready for these types of disputes. So that's the future that I see.
Final question. So can ODR change the world? Has it? Will it?
I think, Mark Arthur, I think it will help change the world if we give justice online. If we don't give justice online and we keep having millions actually of denial of justice, it will not help change the world. But I think it's very important that through this talk and the other talks and all the work you're doing, raising awareness about the needs and about why it should evolve now quickly, because it's high time in 2026. I mean, just to imagine that satellites are launched and we can't get justice online really is inconceivable. It's not a sustainable business plan. And this should be taken forward. I hope it will very quickly, because ODR can change the world, at least regarding online justice.
Definitely ODR can change the world. I think it's changed the world for the last 25 years for sure. If you looked at the impact it's made, for sure it has changed the world. And the future, I would like more people to come in. With AI, you have a lot of opportunity, a lot of use cases which we can try, and ODR should change the world, because now AI makes the impossible possible for sure. We need faster resolution, so ODR is the only way for those faster resolutions. So keeping those systems in place. It's not all about AI. AI is just, an assistant, I would say. But, the whole concept of online dispute resolution, of how can the fourth party, how can you leverage this fourth party? I think that's extremely important. We are in this industry for so many years because we believe in that mission. And that vision that, ODR can make a difference and it can change the world. It can make lives very peaceful. And that's what, we are all here for, to prevent and, to resolve conflicts, because the world is a better place when that happens.
I think it's going to be seamless. I'll give you an example, like PayPal and, Amazon. Amazon went from selling books to now selling everything, right? And now they've integrated AI in their dispute resolution. And whenever there's algorithms are basically going to make everything seamless. So we're not even going to be aware that we're being involved in a dispute. For example, I don't know. There's Fiverr and Freelancer, right? Freelancer has a dispute resolution mechanism between a freelancer and the client. And now they've introduced AI, and now it's almost become seamless. Before, they used to have deadlines when you had to submit your position, just like in a mediation or arbitration, where now it's like AI is pulling that information before you can even submit it. So I think it's going to be, over the next year or so, a lot of the e-commerce and ODR is going to be completely seamless. You're not going to be aware that there was even a conflict, that it will be resolved before you actually could imagine the conflict.
Can online dispute resolution change the world? And what's your thoughts on that? It's a very broad, esoteric kind of question, but what do you think it's taking us, and how is it going to change the world?
I think that any platform that helps people resolve disputes, and especially with the use of artificial intelligence and the use of this technology, you don't have to have an actual legal dispute in order to resolve issues.
Yep.
You can have a conflict between two people that, may not involve legal theories and may not have damages associated with it, or may not deal with a family type matter, but you'll be able to come to a forum where somebody's going to help you resolve that dispute. Or maybe certain things haven't happened to trigger. That hook or that trigger has not happened where it's become a criminal case or a family law case or some other type of case, but you have the ability to diffuse situations and using ODR, is obviously going to be a vehicle for that.
Using ODR is finally mainstream, and the story it took to get here is what you've just watched. Decades of quiet work by people most of us will never meet to make justice something anyone can reach from anywhere, no matter who they are or what they can afford. The tools will keep changing, and AI is already here, but that mission never does. So, can ODR change the world? It already has. The only question left is how far we let it go and who we bring with us. This documentary would not exist without the work of countless individuals, past and present, who have dedicated their careers to advancing online dispute resolution. Many of them I have never met personally, but their academic writing, their research, their advocacy, and their vision have influenced my work and this project in profound ways. This film is dedicated to them, the ODR heroes.